Heavy security presence and restrictions witnessed at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to ward off protesters planning to occupy the airport. Questions emerge of allegedly paid border borders in Nairobi CBD carrying pro-government banners, even as some Kenyans complained of being robbed by the riders.
Wanaotaka kwenda waende kivyao kama individuals. Waache kugawanya Azimio, waache kugawanya members wetu. Wao wana uwezo wa kwenda kivyao, lakini sisi tuko imara.
Plus, Wiper Party denies reports that it is in the talks with President William Ruto to form a government of national unity, even as ODM flip-flops on the move. Well, a very good evening to you. Thank you for making time for us right here on Punchline. I'm Alan Owino. Our sign language interpreter for this session is Evelyn Wangoi. Now, heavy security presence and restrictions were put in place at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as those who accompanied or were receiving passengers were restricted from accessing the airport. This followed warnings from the National Police Service that unauthorized persons planning to storm JKIA will be dealt with. And as Harry Chimena reports, protesters were adamant to walk to JKIA despite the warnings in the latest shift in the anti-government protests.
Kuenda kuingia kwa kiwanja ya ndege huko na hujapata ruhusa ya kuingia huko haitakubalika.
It is a warning that landed on deaf ears as protesters were determined to get to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA. At Bunyala Road from the Central Business District, protesters adamantly began making their way to JKIA. However, they were met with the full wrath of police as tear gas canisters were lobbied against them. The circumstances were similar along the Outer Ring Road. Police dispersing protesters, removing stones and putting off lit tires to pave way for motorists. At JKIA, security was heightened, with police manning different entry and exit points at the airport. Access to drop-offs and pickups were limited, as even those who had accompanied or were expecting passengers were not allowed in past the main fast entry point, contrary to normal operations where people were permitted to make way until outside the various terminals.
Nilikuwa natoka Canada, ilikuwa afike huko saa 2 asubuhi na ikawa wakati tulifika mahali pale tukaambiwa ya kwamba tuwezi ingia na tungoje kwanza, tungoje tusubirie nje. So tumekaa hapo, tukikafika makati, maskari wakakuja wakatufukuza, tukamwambia tuwezi ingia hapo.
Nilikuwa nimeleta hapa mwenzangu pia kukuja kumlaki mwenzake. Na pia sababu nyingine ni kwamba nilikuwa nimekuja pia lazima tuandamane.
Tumetoka Tao, station Tao pale ilikuwa cool, security ilikuwa tight. Kufika hapa hivi man, imekuwa disappointment but I know Gen Z bado tutamake.
Mmoja wetu ambaye ni mtoto wetu alikuwa ametoka US aka drop in Dubai, but kufika kwa airport tumeambiwa hatuwezi ingia, so inabidi turudi tumngojee mahali.
Nilikuwa nimeenda kuchukua kijana yangu ambaye amekaa nje kwa muda. Kufika hapo kwa gate nimeambiwa siwezi kuingia, nitafute mahali nje ningojee, ni kwa sababu ya usalama. Amekaa Dubai kwa sababu ya hii issue ya maandamano. Alifaa kufika Monday na mpaka wa leo hajafika, so nilikuwa na matumaini ya kumuona leo.
And I brought my brother in the morning. He was traveling to MBA, and unfortunately I couldn't get in because I didn't have the gate pass. I didn't have a traveling ticket today because they'd say that there are a lot of restriction in the area for today. And the only people that are allowed to get inside the airport is if maybe you're delivering some goods.
At the primary screening yard, armed officers kept vigil. Only authorized staff had an easy passage. Those from other companies had to produce their clearance passes, and those traveling had to produce their tickets at the first main entry before proceeding, unlike the usual times where passengers produce their tickets at the verification point. Kenya Airports Authority, KAA, had issued an advisory to travelers to arrive 4 hours before their departure time, as traffic disruptions were anticipated on major roads leading to JKIA. Passengers were also told to expect delays in their departure and arrival times. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Questions emerge over border seen in Nairobi's CBD carrying pro-government banners. This so some Kenyans complain of being robbed by the riders, with CBD border operators deny knowing them, even attacking some for allegedly robbing residents and burning their motorbikes. Some unanswered questions include who sponsored the riders and what were their instructions. David Kagina has more.
Early morning on the Tuesday of protests, security was tightened in every corner of the city and there were no signs of protesters. However, a group of boda riders emerged. The riders carried placards demanding that President William Ruto be given more time to fulfill the youth's demands. Then some of the boda riders got off in areas where there were police officers. The police did not seem to take any action against them. At one point, the police were escorting them and everything seemed calm. However, as we followed them, we met citizens complaining of being robbed. These complaints led to people taking to the streets and roughing up the boda riders.
Kijana amekuja na ametoka kwa pikipiki akachukua bag yangu na ametoroka nayo. Saa hii tu hapa kwa kona. Nimeibiwa bag na iko na kila kitu, simu, passport yangu, kila kitu hadi ID.
They are stealing phones, they are stealing and the police are just looking at them. They are not even doing anything.
Clearly the way things are, these are hired people who have been brought here watutishie sisi. As you can see, wanatuibia simu. The police are not even throwing tear gas at them as they used to do to peaceful demonstrators. Currently, ndio wanazunguka wanatuibia simu.
They were then attacked by citizens and other boda service providers in the heart of Nairobi. 2 were seriously injured and 2 motorbikes burned.
Wacha hivyo hata wapigwe tear gas. Sisi wenye tunaandamananga na amani tunapigwa tear gas.
Tumewaambia parliament toeni hao watu hapa. Wananyamaza, wataki kuwatoa. Kwa sababu watu ambao wanalipwa kupingana na vijana wenye wanafanya kazi ambao wamejitolea kwa sababu ya kusaidia Kenya au si wenzetu.
But questions arise. Where did they come from? It is reported that they were seen at a petrol station where they were refueling, yet the sponsor was unknown. At one point, they were seen surrounding a Range Rover vehicle in one of the streets within the CBD. Then they proceeded straight to the city center. Who were they? Who sponsored them? And where did these hooligans come from?
There were people on motorbikes. There were people on motorbikes.
When the group was dispersed, that's when the protests began. Youths marched from city towards JKIA grounds. Some remained in the city. David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
Tens of protesters have been arrested in Kajiado, Kwale and Kisumu counties for participating in the anti-government countrywide protests. And as Mila Kisenya now reports, major highways like the Nairobi-Namanga and Kisumu-Nairobi were paralyzed for the better part of the day as demonstrators engaged police in running battles.
It's 1 month down the line since the onset of the anti-government protest. And as this week's protest kicked off today, this was the situation, running battles between the police and protesters. In Kwale County, at least 3 people were arrested shortly after purchasing vuvuzelas before embarking on what they termed as peaceful protest.
I have not been charged.
How do you arrest someone of buying vuvuzela? That is her right. Hiyo nguvu wako nayo kushika watu wakiprotest, watumie hiyo nguvu kushika vijana mapanga. Ama
right ya kuprotest iko protected very well under the constitution. I don't see why somebody should be arrested, awekwe ndani for no reasons, asichajiwe. The OCS is here, tunamwambia our charge. We have cash bail, tuko tayari kutoa. Our release, it is their right to be released. Ama awapeleke kotini. Anawashika, anaweka huko ndani. Those are threats.
In Kitengela, Kajiado County, tens of protesters were arrested. Heavy presence of KDF, prison officers and the police was spread across the town. And as the police took turns to deal with the protesters, business owners took chance to guard their premises. In Machakos County, the situation was no different. Bonfires were lit along the Machakos-Kitui Road, paralyzing transport activities. And in Kisumu County, at least 2 protesters were arrested during the long day protest. Business and transport activities were also paralyzed.
Siku ya Ruto kitu amesema sijafurahia, ati yako tayari kubambana na sisi kama vijana. Na sisi ni viongozi wa kesho. Kama mimi mwenyewe nilikuwa nakula githeri pale, polisi anakuja ananipiga rungu ya mguu. Sasa mimi nimemfanyia nini?
He is playing abracadabra game with the youth. We are the people who voted in for him, and he used us, confusing us with wheelbarrow. Now, the same way Mike Mbuvi Sonko, former governor of Nairobi, and Waititu, the way they were impeached and they left power, the same way we want the MPs who voted yes to vote him out.
I have come today carrying my constitution, and I'm asking you, the president, implement this constitution. This is the constitution of Kenya. Implement it to its fullest. Follow it to its fullest. You are calling us to a dialogue. The dialogue that we are telling you to do is to implement the constitution of Kenya. And if you are unable to do that, then Mr. President, resign.
The situation was similar in Mombasa County, where Gen Z demonstrators took to the streets in opposition of the new cabinet nominees and the president's sentiments on crushing the demos. Protesters have, however, vowed to continue with the weekly demos until their demands are met.
We gave him time. He disbanded the cabinet. The same people who the public are complaining about, they are back for the appointments. So, what extra time do we need?
Yeah, alisema enough is enough. Na yeye si constitution, yeye ni custodian wa constitution. Na constitution inatukubalia kuandamana kwa amani.
Leo ni kwa maandamano kutetea haki zetu. And apart from that, this guy has been giving us promises. Empty promises.
Watoto wakisikizwa na makanisa isungumbuze, iseme mbaya kile kinaendelea. Makanisa yaache kuwekwa mifukoni.
Milia Kisienya, K24 TV.
Details have emerged indicating that India's largest airport infrastructure company has allegedly secured a lease of 30 years to take ownership of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. While in an interview in a local media house, Kisii Senator Richard Onyonka has petitioned the Senate Committee on Roads and Transport to issue a statement on how the purported deal was undertaken, with Adani allegedly granting them the mandate to operate JKA under a build, operate and transfer model.
Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, formerly called Embakasi Airport, and Nairobi International Airport, is Kenya's largest aviation facility and the busiest airport in East Africa. Its importance as an aviation center makes it the pace-setter for other airports in the region. In 2023, KRA Customs and Border Control CNBC Department collected approximately 49.06 billion shillings against a target of 46.991 billion shillings. The figures could potentially attract investors. The recent investor, though, seems to have started on a wrong footing. This as details emerge on the alleged acquisition of the facility without proper procedure. Kisii Senator Richard Onyonka has stirred up a conversation around the ownership of JKIA. Onyonka says Kenya Airports Authority KAA has entered into a deal to lease JKIA to an Indian firm, Adani Airport Holdings Limited. In what seemed to be a deal that was happening away from the public eye, Onyonka spilled it, even petitioning Senate Committee on Roads and Transport to issue a statement on how the purported deal was undertaken. He has also called for the Senate to be provided with documentation from KAA board meeting on July 15, 2024, including the notice of agenda, meetings and resolution. The senator also expressed concerns about the government's alleged plans to provide Adani Commercial with free land for city-side development on public land. He highlighted potential land issues that could arise in areas surrounding JKIA due to such developments. Adani is India's largest airport infrastructure company, accounting for 25% of passengers' footfalls and 33% of India's air cargo traffic. Conversation around KQ wanting to take over JKIA started in 2019, even though the chair Michael Joseph said they had considered it, but it was just an option.
Of course, it was one of the options that we considered 3 years ago when we went through the financial restructuring.
It was not an option that we wanted to take, but we said it's one. But we obviously never considered that we would do it. And going forward, it is still not an option.
Meanwhile, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, while appearing before the National Assembly Budget and Appropriations Committee, dismissed claims of an intended sale of JKIA to a foreign investor, adding that a sale of such high-value asset can only be done after public memoranda and approval by Parliament.
Let me discount immediately that the airport, Jomo Kenyatta Airport, is not on sale.
Operated by Kenya Airports Authority, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is served by airlines with direct connections to Europe, the Middle East, Asia and Africa. Linda Koskei, K24 TV.
Well, that report by Linda Koskei brings us to a fast break right here in Punchline. We'll be back with more updates in a short while.
Have you watched K24? We would love to hear from you. Send us your feedback on what you like